Hi, good evening. Welcome to the village board meeting. It is 7:47. Was this meeting properly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
It looks like all board members are present. I'd just like to remind everyone, we had a committee, people were asking us to speak into the microphone so everyone can hear for the remainder of the meeting. Our first agenda item is a special order of business. 4A, the 2018 CAFR and financial statement audit presentation. We have Dan Berg, one of our auditor representatives from Sikich? Dan. Hi, Dan.
Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. I'm mostly here to answer any questions you might have about the documents you have before you. I also would like to report that the audit went very well. Mark did a heck of a job preparing for us and being ready with answers to our questions and research that we needed. Mark, of course, wrote the comprehensive annual financial report. We helped edit it and assisted along the way, including the production of the actual report. It is a certificate-ready report, meaning that it is ready to go to the Government Finance Officers Association for participation in the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Award, which it has received in the past. And the fact that it's a comprehensive annual financial report means the village went above and beyond what's required by GAAP, by generally accepted accounting principles. It includes an introductory section as well as a statistical section. If you haven't had a chance to peruse this, it's kind of a lengthy document, but there is a management discussion and analysis that appears immediately after our opinion that was written by staff, and it gives you a description of what happened this year in comparison to last year, and provides a little depth and explanation and a little color to the numbers. We did give the best opinion we're allowed to give, commonly referred to as a clean opinion. We refer to that as an unmodified opinion. It simply states that financial statements present fairly in all material respects. Ancillary to the report are the TID reports, which we also issued, as well as the required communication to the board with a few suggestions for improvement. The village did finish the year in better financial condition than it began. It added to the bottom line, if you will, showing a net profit, if you will. The general fund itself, the biggest fund, actually had budgeted for reduction in fund balance of almost $300,000. It was almost exactly spot on that. It still has close to 4 months worth of expenses within, almost 5 months, within its fund balance, exceeding the current fund balance policy of 30% of current expenditures. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the work product we have for you.
Can you repeat the last statement you said? And maybe more.
I'm sorry. If you compare the fund balance of $4.5 million, which is the unassigned fund balance, to the actual expenditures for the 2018 year and divide the two, you wind up at 39.5%, which is above the 30% required by your fund balance policy.
And is that higher than it was last year?
No, it's actually a bit of a reduction.
So it's above our policy, but we're working towards bringing it down to meet policy guidelines.
It was budgeted for a slight reduction. I haven't taken a look at this year's budget for 2019, if that's the similar case. It is.
That's the strategy, yes.
And last question, and I'm going to open up to the floor, is what is the year that we reach 30% based on our long-range financial plan of reducing?
It's several years out. I will have to spin those numbers because a big portion of that's dependent on the debt service stabilization component that we've been budgeting for. And I will have that refreshed data for you within the next few weeks.
Thank you. Trustee Warren.
Just a quick question, how do these reserve numbers equate benchmark against other similar villages to Shorewood?
Each individual village can create its own fund balance policy. The larger the village or city, the lower the percentage, simply because the numbers are much larger. If that makes sense. So I've seen as low as 15%, I've seen as high as 50% in smaller cities. So the idea is to have stabilization in fund balance for any specific or any emergencies. And also, the rating agencies, quite frankly, prefer to lend money and issue bonds to people that don't really need the product. If you know. It's Standard & Poor's and Moody's. They look to the trends of your fund balance up and down and whether it was planned.
Trustee Hunter.
I have two questions. One is on our OPEB liability. So we do pay as you go for OPEB, correct?
Almost everyone does.
So service service costs and interest, there's benefit payments, which I see as a negative of 273,839. But what are can you just explain to me service costs? And I'm on page 87.
Right. Basically, other post-employment benefits is the expenditures that the village incurs for former employees staying on your insurance.
Correct.
Some of it is explicit subsidies, in which some of it might be paid for by the village. Much of it is what's called implicit subsidies. But almost no one is funding that because it would require the village to move financial assets out of its spendable reserves and into a restricted position that it would not be able to touch it for any other lawful purpose. So almost all of my clients are on a pay-as-you-go type situation. The service cost itself is the anticipated amount that will be spent from one year to the next, or in this case, the current year, whereas the interest would be the amount assumed on the liability that was outstanding already. That make sense?
Okay. So that's interest on our
On the liability, on the unfunded portion.
on the unfunded liability. Okay. All right. So, but that's not an actual. The only actual payments we make are when someone submits a bill because they're
As part of-
retiree on the plan, and then we make a payment to them.
And as part of your ongoing insurance.
Okay. Okay, the other question I had, when I was looking at the TIDs, the transfers out, and I assume they're transfers out to the debt service fund, correct? So for TID 1, the transfer out is equal to principal and long-term debt and interest and fiscal charges together. It's 1.538125.
Exactly.
But when you look at the other TIDs, the transfer out is 290,000, and if you look on page 5, that's principal on GO bonds, and there's interest beneath that. So I was just curious why they differ between TID 1 and the other TIDs.
I'd have to review that in a little more detail to give you a definitive answer, but the transfers out are monies that go to pay the debt service for kids. That's the only purpose for those transfers.
For both interest and
So
principal.
if they're just presented slightly different, it's certainly something I can
We'll make
look to
yeah.
standardize next year.
It just looked inconsistent, like interest is included in one but not the other, so I just point that out and maybe take a look at it.
I sure can.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions? I have one last one. No? I don't know if it's directed to you or Mark, and if this is the right time, if it goes into the CAFR, but when we had our interviews for financial advisor, you had mentioned Standard & Poor's and your bond ratings. One of the interview candidates had mentioned that the bond rating agencies looks at not only our outstanding debt, but the debt for your municipality, including the school district, your 5 borrowing agencies, and then they assess, so if the debt per household went up based on those 5 taxing agencies, your bond rating could potentially go down. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, if the debt burden on the citizens is too high, in their opinion, it could negatively impact your rating. So the fact that the schools and the technical colleges and the county can issue debt for which the citizens of Shorewood are also accountable for, albeit a very small percentage, that's on page 112 of the CAFR, where it shows your actual percentage. I would think that it would have a minimal impact because those percentages are very small, but I'm certain that it could impact.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? No motion? Just information? Okay. Thank you so much. Great time.
I did want to mention that we did not include the bid this year as part of the audit. The state law changed that allowed us to not. So keep an eye on that going forward.
How would that affect the village in any way?
It's not included in the comprehensive.
I'm just saying, you said keep an eye, so I just want to know.
So if the bid were to ever obtain a level of a financial level of $300,000 in cash or more, we would need to revoke that. That's not very likely.
It's just a reporting standard that we need to comply with.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item that we have on our agenda is citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. I would like, I know there's some residents out in the audience in Mayweather that are here to talk about the historic preservation of Milwaukee County exec's home that resides in the village of Shorewood. If there's any other residents on here on a different topic, if you want to step forward first, and then we'll move on to the next.
Sure. Hi, Alan Ackerman, 2500 East Beverly Road. I'm speaking on an issue that concerns me, and I have reason to believe it's important to other village committee volunteers. I believe strongly in the importance of civic participation and civic engagement, and I volunteered for the village for a very long time, probably from the very first time I moved here. In fact, my very first position was on the original Conservation Committee. I was trying to find out when. I think it was the late 1970s, 80s. I served for 3 terms, though another year beyond that, so I served for 10 years. And we began the recycling program, and I was just reminiscing with Leanne that we used volunteer community members to drive the DPW trucks to pick up newspapers on Saturdays, if you can imagine the legal issue on that. So that's when I started. I didn't drive the truck, it was a paper drive, and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the student governments made money by collecting the papers on a Saturday and delivering them and getting away pennies. But anyway, when those terms, my term in that committee was completed, the 9 or 10 years, because I wasn't quite sure, I was invited to a village board meeting. I was recognized publicly, and I was even given a little desk memento, which I still have. And it became part of my consciousness about being involved in the village. This is a far cry from what just happened to me, and I suspect to other committee volunteers. I was unceremoniously told my service was completed. I was surprised, as I had only served 2 3-year terms, and I heard nothing about a change in the length of service or a change in policy. At first, I was told I had served a longer time frame, and that the record showed that I began on the Parks Commission in 2010. But as I pointed out to Rebecca and others, I was a village trustee at that time, and certainly not a volunteer committee member. For a village board that talks about transparency and valuing community input, that's not what happened in this case. No written notice, no email, no official phone call to explain that there had been a change in policy regarding length of service. I initiated some emails and I initiated a phone call. So imagine how surprised and, to be honest, undervalued I felt when I went to the May 21st meeting of the committee and was told that that indeed was my final meeting. I had no notice so that I could have properly thanked my committee members, no board recognition of the service, and the other committee member was similarly treated. I'm not asking for recognition after the fact. I'm not here for you to pat me on the head and say, oh, you were so nice to do this. I don't need that and I don't want that. But I have to hear, or we deserve to hear as citizens and volunteer citizens, why you would change the policy on the length of service without contacting existing committee members, existing committees, to learn about their needs, committee desires, committee expectations for service. Committees don't meet that often. And if you understood that through committee time, you know they meet maybe 7 or 8 meetings a year, unless they have a very specific project. It takes a while for a committee to learn to work together, to set goals, to understand processes, and to move forward. When committee memberships change frequently, and when people don't serve very long, committees lose their momentum. They lose the deep knowledge, and they lose understandings. So I challenge you tonight, in future, to rethink how you proceeded on this matter. I challenge you to seek information from those serving. I challenge you to value their work, their contributions, acknowledge their value, and be transparent about what you really want from the committees. I will continue to volunteer my service. I told you I'm civic-minded. I'm currently on the Board of Review, which is a statutory committee that meets once or twice the whole year. It's a technical type committee. I volunteered because when I was a trustee, I knew that not many people want to be on this committee. There's no limelight. It's just hard work and thoughtful work. My appointment expires in May 2020. Should I be concerned that I will not be reappointed? Will my training that I have to go through this summer, 2 hours on a video session, will that be valued? Or will it be for naught? Because the committee only will meet one time after my training. I suggest that you put on your future agendas a discussion on developing relationships with committee volunteers, learning from them, valuing their time and service for Shorewood. And if you'd like some help on that, I volunteer my service.
Our village manager has just reminded us and wanted me to let the citizens know. Unfortunately, we are here to take the comments and to listen, but we're not to respond in this session. But definitely, personally, one-on-one, or maybe at a future session. Is that correct?
Of future consideration.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
We have a copy of Ms. Eklund's letter entered into the public record.
Oh, did you present a letter?
But you meant my notes? Well, they're almost accurate.
It's your choice. You don't have to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
She'd like to see one.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else on any other item that is not currently the historic preservation item? Yes.
Hello,
Hello. Name and address.
Anastasia Brockmeyer, 4313 North Woodland Street. And I apologize, I missed the public works committee meeting, so something may have changed on sidewalks. I can't even get a call back from DPW, I feel so bad, they're probably swamped, but I want to know who chose what is replaced, what methodology they're using, because there is no rhyme or reason. I can walk down my block, I have 3 that could be shaved that are being replaced. They're very healthy looking ones that are being replaced. Then there are ones huge cracks and pits that don't have any circles. I have a lot of questions. So if somebody could maybe at least communicate with the citizens in the quadrant you're doing this in, that would be helpful, like a letter or something other than finding out weird scraps of information on Facebook. I'm not in middle school, I don't want to find out my information on Facebook. I would prefer true, honest communication from the village about what is happening when, what the costs associated with that are, how you are going to charge us, who's doing the selection, because if this is some random contractor who's affiliated with the contracting firm, I really have a problem with that. So a little transparency would be appreciated. That's all, really. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you. And Rebecca, will you get in touch with Anastasia or follow up?
I've got 2 calls in, so I'm assuming I'm somewhere in a queue, because I think everybody on my block called. So.
I've got lots of calls.
And I can call it, I'm just gonna call it DPW again, it's fine, but just,
On the agenda
Okay.
tonight, by the way.
and I want this one.
9B.
Item 9.
Please.
After the liquor,
Thank you.
how that liquor,
Hello?
and none for me.
So we can talk on the sidewalks, though.
You're not supposed to.
Oh,
You said items that are on the agenda. You will tonight.
And will
We
I
have
to
before.
talk?
I will pull it from the
allowed?
agenda.
Okay, because I want to.
I mean, I will pull it from the
Okay.
consent agenda.
Excuse me, we're checking the village attorney.
Okay, so it's noticed, but it's out of order. As a practical matter, if you don't want to make people sit through the other agenda
Right.
items, if you want to take public comment, just note that and put that in there.
Okay.
Because again, it's properly noted for the meeting, but it's just, this is practically an opportunity if there are any individuals that want to speak on that agenda. I don't think it's improper or not breaking public records law or open meetings law. That's what we have.
Thank you for that legal opinion. I do appreciate the residents that can afford to take their time to come here, and so in practice, I've always allowed anyone that was able to stay to go ahead and speak on an agenda item.
Okay, Jerry Dietrich, 4416 North Ardmore. I too would like to complain about the sidewalk program. I'm a walker, I love the sidewalks, and I'm just very disappointed in the way they mark them all. I have 10 sidewalks, I have 3 properties, but 10 sidewalks, and I have a conflict or a dispute on 6 of them. So, and in walking around looking, you know, on Morris, Woodburn, and several other streets, I thought, oh, who marked this? Some are consistent and some are inconsistent with everything. So, you know, I think you should really, really reconsider it. It is just, the sidewalks that I saw that they want to remove are good sidewalks. They all might have a little plug in them from mud jacking years ago, but they're perfectly fine. No one's going to trip on those. And I hate to see the program delayed, or I've heard the different things. I've talked to Leanne at DPW, the different aspects that you might choose to do. But the sidewalks do need to be done, some of them. So I hate to see the program scrapped. But I think it needs to be gone over again. I looked at the criteria. I think the criteria was wrong to start out with because it talked about mud jacking on there. I think it was number 6, and I thought we haven't mud jacked in like 5 years or so. So I'd appreciate if you really do look at it again. And if not, I'd like to protest some of my sidewalks.
Thank you, Ms. Dietrich. If you can stay for the item, then we can respond and you'll hear our discussion. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else with an item?
I'd like to call point of order.
So I know that are we allowing people to talk about things that are not on the, or that are on the agenda or not? And how do we decide that? Is that a body decision or is that a unilateral decision by the president?
The attorney just addressed that.
I didn't hear because you were
Okay.
also talking at the same time.
What was the question?
You said that we have the right to allow for items to be discussed that are on the agenda. I'm wondering, when you say we have the right to, is that a decision made by the body? Who makes that decision? Because on the agenda it says, and this is not against you, Jerry, or anyone else, I just would like to clarifications just because the rules sometimes aren't always linear. If we are going to allow discussion or comments from the public on items that are on the agenda during items, during this specific item, I was just wondering how we determine that.
Well, under chapter 155-3 of the village code, it does refer to the president as the presiding officer at the meeting to basically control the flow of the meeting and the orderly discussion thereof. So I think under 155-3, I think that's within the purview of the village president to be able to make that determination.
Okay, so as a point of order then, President Rozek, are we allowing items right now that are on the agenda for people to come up and speak about them for any item?
Yes.
Or, okay, that's all I wanted to know. Okay,
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on a matter other than historic preservation, which we'll get to next? Okay, seeing none, then any resident that is here to speak on the historic preservation issue, please feel free to step forward and just say your name and address.
Hi, Carmen DeCartog, 4537 North Sheffield. I'm here tonight both as a citizen and also as a representative of the Shorewood Historical Society Board. And in regard to the house at 3524 North Lake Drive, which has the demolition question hanging over its head. The house on Lake Drive was built in 1927 by Alexander Eschweiler, a very well-known, very reputable architect. It was built in the style sometimes called Art Deco. It's a beautiful home that has been on many home tours, and as far as we know, it has been well maintained. In 2011, we had a house survey done of complete village, and when it was completed, the woman who did the survey said that there aren't many houses in Shorewood that really belong on the National Register because the quality of the housing overall is so good. that there weren't all that many houses that stood out that she would nominate for that kind of designation. However, the house at 3534 North Lake was one of the houses she would have recommended if people wanted to go ahead with that. So it's got history that's recognized well beyond the village. Overall, it's become an integral part of our historic neighborhoods, which is a really, really important thing for the Historical Society. It's one of our primary goals is to help people recognize the historic nature of the neighborhoods they lived in, and so much of that is tied up in the housing. So we are obviously against having the house torn down, and I have 3 points that I want to briefly make tonight about that. We understand that legally we might not be able to stop demolition based on current village ordinances. So we are trying to change Mr. Abel's mind, and we welcome the board's support in that endeavor. There's been a lot of emails sent. I believe today there was a some kind of survey thing going around that people could sign. Obviously, we were on TV on all 4 channels last Friday. So pressure is being put on. We're not sure what effect that's having, but at any rate, we're doing it because we think that's probably the only thing we can truthfully do at this point to be effective. The second thing, I want to thank Rebecca Ewald for sending out a very good explanation of the current procedure and policy in regard to how the Design Review Board will work to address Mr. Abel's request. It makes it very obvious why the law is pretty thin and why it would be very difficult to try to stop this totally. But I think that the public needs to know that. They need to know where we are at right now so that they're not making up stories trying to figure out why we're not doing more specific action. So if that information can be included in the village manager's memo, published in other places, that would be great. I know she supplied that information to the TV stations, but that doesn't necessarily mean they got on the air. So we need to be proactive ourselves to get that information out. And then the third thing is that I hope that we can build on that policy, so that's our starting point. There are over 150 communities in the state of Wisconsin that have historic preservation commissions, places where they have devised policies to help preserve their housing, their businesses, whatever it is that is important to their community. A lot of this is run by state law, and it is very much directed by the State Historical Society, who present a lot of educational efforts in that regard. They have to come in and help us to formulate that kind of thing. So sometimes it takes a crisis to get us moving. It took one in the Bay about 5 years ago when somebody came in and tore down a house. I hope for the best in this particular situation, but I think it's an opportunity not to be missed when we've garnered so much community interest and the feeling that this is the time to look at historic preservation ordinances, perhaps a commission, but some way to preserve our historic neighborhoods. I'm here with these 3 other ladies. I don't know if they want to add anything to it. Kathy Keene, Kathy Flaherty, and Kathy Kowalski. We are of like mind, but if you want to add something?
Good evening, my name is Kathy Keene and I live at 4412 North Woodward Street. And I've been involved with raising awareness about history and architecture in the larger Milwaukee community ever since I moved here 40 years ago. And I've been a member of the Board of Historic Milwaukee, and I've worked at Historic Milwaukee Incorporated, and also I'm on the board of the Shorewood Historical Society board now. And I just want everybody to be sure that we are as aware as we should be about how this house in particular is important, but it's part of a larger story that Shorewood has. We're a unique community, and sometimes we take our uniqueness for granted. And it's when a crisis like this comes up. And I certainly understand that new architecture can be very stunning and can add to the built environment, but there are places where architecture that's already been put in place is so stellar that for that to go down and be replaced even by something wonderful, we will have lost something unique. And it's the entrance to the village, and it starts the tone for how the historic character of Shorewood developed. So I'm extremely disappointed that our county executive, who could lead the community in showing how we add to the assets, not detract from them, is going to happen right in our neighborhood. I hope you all know that Historic Milwaukee had the home on its Faces and Traces tour in 2007, and it was a breast cancer house in 2005. And even if things have come out of the house already, they can be replaced, and wiring and things that in the house can be changed and still keep its historic character. There are lots of experts who know how to do that. And I think that the village should be aware and take a stand. And we want responsible citizens, but we want responsible knowledge to be shared by everybody. And I do think the community should be aware and work toward the future so that we've got 100-year-old stock now. Sure, it's going to be old, and if you're going to, you could wipe the whole thing out. But to have this one in particular go without us understanding what it'll mean for the future, it'll tell others, come on in, take the property, you may love the neighborhood, as the quote said in the paper, but what are you doing to the future neighborhood?
Thank you so much.
Catherine Flaherty, 2500 Exclusion Avenue. I'll just speak briefly because two people who preceded me spoke so well. I wrote to all of you already, so you know how I think about this issue. And I received responses from 4 of you, so I know that you're grappling with this too. It's a wake-up call for our village. We should have done something about this a long time ago. To have heard that the Historic Society approached the village board 10 years ago to do something and nothing happened is heartbreaking. I'm sure the people who sold this house are very sorry they didn't have a clause in their contract that wouldn't allow for demolition. I wrote my letter to Chris Abley. I noticed on his website, listening to his constituents is his priority. After I submitted my email, he has made it his top priority to make sure that the thoughts and concerns of Milwaukee County residents are heard. And then I got an email listening to his constituents is a top priority for me. I know that a public hearing isn't required for this process, but he's not only a resident, we are all his constituents. I believe the village board should invite him to agree to do a public hearing. He talks about loving this community, loving the neighborhood. I find that very hard to believe if his goal is to rip down that house, which would be disastrous for the architecture in our village. I don't know if this is something that's going to be on the village board next meeting, or if, I know it's going to the design review board, I get that, but what the response from this board is going to be in response to Mr. Abley to attempt to do what Karen DeHartog talked about, getting him to change his mind and see the error of his ways. I talked to many people who feel the way that we do, and I know we're all still in the beginning stage of what can we do about it. I get that the law is thin, but I think there is a way to put public pressure on him to get him to change his mind. So, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Anyone else here to speak?
I'm Beth Jacobassi, 3827 North Prospect. I'm not any historic committee or anything in Shorewood, but I've lived here for 33 years, and we have a century home, and my husband and I have been very careful to give it all the tender, loving care that it deserves, and to keep it in tip-top shape, and also to make sure that it stays true to form with anything that we've done with the house. And it just, I grew up in Ohio, and when I moved to Shorewood, one of the reasons we picked Shorewood was because of the beautiful architecture. And I had so many family and friends that come to visit, and they love to walk around and look at all the different styles of architecture and how well preserved it is. And I'm also a big walker, and I've seen these signs up in Whitefish Bay that these houses are being torn down, and it just breaks my heart. And I've always been very proud of the fact that that doesn't happen, or I haven't seen it happen in Shorewood. And now, like, one of the best homes in the village is at risk of being torn down. And I hope that we can do something to change Chris Abley's mind, but I really encourage the board to come up with some sort of an ordinance to prevent this from happening in the future. And one of my neighbors today was talking to me and he said, well, you know, the seller should have put in a clause saying that they can't demolish the home once it's sold. So perhaps we need to work with the realtors in this area and encourage them to put, you know, if the seller does not want their home to be raised, that they make sure that they put that in the paperwork for the sale of the home.
Thank you. I do know that it will be on a future agenda, the ordinance, during prioritization, so thank you. Anybody else here that would like to speak on any item? Just your name and address.
Okay. Elizabeth Light, 4456 North Ardmore. I don't have extensive comments. I just want to add my support to those who spoke and to encourage the board to do something about historic preservation in Shorewood. I think all of you are probably, like most of us, and we move here and we love it here because of the history and the architecture. And the person who said it's the gateway to Shorewood is absolutely correct. So whether we can change Mr. Ailey's decision, I don't know, I hope so. But we can at least protect future homes, and I would love to see a historic preservation commission in Shorewood, and just to have some sort of plan going forward, because all of these buildings and homes and our business district are only getting older, but that makes them more precious at the same time. Each one is more vulnerable. So please take this up seriously and help determine a plan for historic preservation in Shorewood. I think the longer we go without guidance, the more often something like this is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other residents who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will close that agenda item for tonight and move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, and are there items that continue?
Approve consent agenda.
I'd like to inquire for that for a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to call items B and C from the consent agenda.
What number?
Oh, sorry. B, let's close it.
I need to pull 6. Here's the one that's coming. Oh, I'm sorry, 7A. Is that correct? Okay, E, 7. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to pull 7. Yeah. Wait. No, 7. 6E, 7B.
Oh,
6E, 7A.
I know, right? I can read.
So far it's 6B, 6C.
6B, 6, 7AB.
Can we say the title so that we don't forget?
5C Crispy Browns.
5, so 6C, whatever, this is Crispy Browns 5. Okay. 5C.
And 6E, 5D, Metro Market also.
Okay, so maybe we can repeat these back.
I have 6B, consider village board and committee of the whole minutes of May 20th, 2019. 6C, consider 2019 committee appointments for the business district, committee, development authority, recreation advisory committee, and the pedestrian bicycle safety committee. We have 6E, 7, A and B, second-hand dealer and pawnbroker license.
Wait, you missed 5.
Yep, I'm 11.
No, I said
There's
A.
my order. Yep. Eco ATM and Swinky Seconds. And then 6, 5, C for Crispy Browns. Who's that?
65D for Mega Marts LLC, doing business as an secretary. Any questions?
Okay. For the discussion, we have a motion and a second with those items being pulled. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So now we will go to the first item that was booked in the title. 6 feet.
Okay, yes, thank you. So, last meeting, you all discussed with the absence of trustee Bonner and I, items for future consideration, item 7. So, excuse me, sorry, items removed from the consent agenda, 6B. This is all under item 7 from the minutes. And I have, I guess, a couple of things, including questions and comments and just general concerns. I'll start with the first part. Let's see, future items of consideration. And I watched the video, so I did hear the discussion that some of the trustees had, and I want to thank you, Trustee Menta, and I believe it was you, Trustee Carpenter, for bringing this to the board, that because the video had stopped the previous meeting. So, but I do want to also correct some of the misinformation that is here and was also mentioned in the video, but that's a different discussion. So, items for future consideration, it says discussion with trustee Bockhorst mentioned she did not trust the review was deliberate on village manager review wrap-up. So that's not completely accurate, and I'm just curious why I would be editorialized in my absence. I did say that we, and also Trustee McKay is not mentioned under here as well for her discussion in that whole process, or her comments. It says Trustee Bockhorst brought up reviewing the appointment process for standing committee assignments and would not make a motion. There was no requirement for a motion. I did have a few of you yelling at me to make a motion, that is true. So President Rozek made the motion and there was no second. And then it says change the last sentence to say President Rozek. Anyway, we could do it a couple of different ways. I could continue to go on and pick apart this point by point. I could ask for a discussion. We could defer this. You guys could reconsider the vote on the minutes so that they accurately represent what actually happened at that meeting. Because now I am present for us to have a discussion. And I guess, but if that doesn't happen, I will say, I believe you did, Trustee Carpenter and Trustee Menta, make the point for me that I did not trust the process. Which is true, because I'm not trusting the process here of having words put in my mouth for things that, for an item I was not here for. I disagree. I would like to at least say that, and I would actually ask my board members to consider reconsidering the vote on these, or the changes made to these.
Okay, Attorney Barrett, can you just advise us on what would need to be done if the board unanimously vote to adopt that change? And so if it is inaccurate based on a video, what would the board need to do?
There wasn't a video of this.
Oh, okay, so if it's being challenged by, I mean, I don't know if it matters, you can tell me, does it matter if the person isn't at the board when you're making a change, if the clerk's here?
Okay, so just to clarify, there is not a video of this portion of the meeting.
There's a video of the discussion of this portion because this was not added in the original minutes, but Trustee
Correct.
Carpenter and Trustee Menta, which is not mentioned here in the minutes.
Just answer this question, please. Yes, correct.
So there is no video.
There is no video.
I was not present.
Right, so the clerk was not here either, which is another point that I have of a problem of being editorialized by a clerk that wasn't here.
Attorney Barrett is researching it.
I understand what's
I'm trying to
happening.
figure out, I'm looking at Robert's Rules of Orders concerning the correction of the minutes, and see if it's proper to correct the minutes of somebody that was not present.
I'm fine with deferring this till next time.
Please answer the question.
Yeah, I don't think,
Whoa.
there's at least an implication, I think, that the reading of the Robert's Rules of Orders is that it's implicit that the correction was made by someone who was there because they would be commenting upon what they said or another individual said. If there's no video of it either, I think that it's appropriate for the amendments to be made by someone who participated in the meeting.
And to reconsider, would we need to vote to reconsider? And if so, would it be the part?
Here is.
Right,
Is
to
there
motion
any-
to reconsider, but would it need to be from the prevailing side,
It would
correct?
have to be someone who voted
Right.
for us, would have to move to reconsider, correct?
You
Well,
can't-
there's, I mean, we're not really reconsidering an action that was taken by the board. We're
We
just-
voted on the
Yes,
change
but
in the
then
minutes.
before-
On the minutes of the approval of the minutes.
These are
Right.
these minutes. the
Right.
minutes.
So
Or the
someone
amendment of the
who-
minutes.
So someone other than.
Right, it's
James
because we
might-
approved it, so it's a reconsideration, right?
That's right. There's a specific ordinance that covers motions to reconsider.
Correct.
And it says that the motion is to be made by somebody who, I'll read it right here.
Was on the prevailing side.
Pardon me, I'm scrolling through chapter 155 here. I think it's subset, I apologize, taking a minute here to find it. Yeah, it must be brought by someone who voted with the prevailing side.
Okay, thank you.
To reconsider.
Is there any trustee here tonight that would like to make a motion to reconsider that was on the prevailing vote?
I can't remember if I voted for this decision.
We all did.
Okay, I so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second to reconsider?
Does that have to be someone who was here at the meeting?
Mm-hmm. That voted.
I'll second so we can discuss.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So what we're doing here is it just so trustee Bacchus has an opportunity to discuss, to provide input into this,
Mhm.
this small section of the minutes?
Sure. Okay. Does anyone have any further comments? Trustee Menta?
No, I don't, I just want to vote.
Okay, there is a resident that would like to speak. Would you like to come and say your name? And address, sorry.
My name is Jeff Davidian, 4101 North Prospect Avenue. Who writes the minutes? And if the clerk is not here, who is responsible for the content of the minutes?
Okay. Yep. Do you want?
I wrote them in the clerk's absence. For that paragraph.
But this was amended because what was originally here, the two trustees that I mentioned before, corrected. So it doesn't indicate anywhere here that they had wanted to correct what was originally in the minutes.
Correct.
And do we have an
Thank you.
original copy of the minutes?
You're probably online.
I guess we
Yeah, in the previous packet.
Yeah.
So, okay, is there any further discussion? Trustee Buckers?
And I'm fine with us deferring this item, since if it's allowed procedurally.
I have a point of order, there's a motion and a second. on the
Correct.
floor.
It could be
We need to vote on the further discussion, and then we need to vote.
I have a question, so.
Trustee Menta?
We're voting to reconsider, do people who were, do all 7 of us vote, or just the 5 of us who were there?
That's a great question, thank you. Attorney Barrett?
Not specifically addressed in the Robert's Rules of Order or the statute or the ordinance. But the question whether to reconsider, again, was only voted on by all that were present. So
And
the
is
question is
that the
now the
motion,
underlying
that's
vote.
the motion in front of us, correct,
That's
to
the motion in
reconsider?
front of
Okay.
So now we're going to go back. If you decide to reconsider it, then you open up the floor to the original,
5.
the original, right?
Okay.
It would have to go back to the original 5 that voted, just someone who was not present to vote on the original, and was not present. It wouldn't make sense for them to comment on or vote on the content of a minute from the meeting that they were not